So society alone is to blame. And I think a lot of people still say the media caused this one way or another. Not the case. And now we go into a little bit of genetic territory. My starting point is that eating disorders run in families, that eating disorders are heritable, that genes play a substantial role in the liability to eating disorders, but environment is also important. And I think where we're going to find a lot of the money when it comes to eating disorders are gene-environment interaction, correlation, and epigenetic factors. Not quite there yet, but we're starting to sort out the genetic piece for sure. And a great quote to our knowledge, this is the first time in the history of psychiatry where there is a clear path to increasing our fundamental understanding of these disorders being psychiatric illnesses. And I'm going to illustrate the usual suspects slide in a different way. So this is what I call Cynthia Bulik had too much time on her hands on a Saturday morning. There are 20,000 dots on this slide, and those 20,000 odd dots represent the human genome. And the orange ones up top are the genes that we know something about. The blue ones on the bottom are the great frontier, the ones that we don't know anything about yet. And even more interesting is all the spaces in between those 20,000 dots that we used to think were just junk are also really important to making us who we are. So there's information embedded not only in the dots, but in the interdot interval that's important for us to understand. Back in the day when we spent a lot of money doing candidate gene studies, we thought somehow that we had the vision of God and that we could just pick one gene and say, I think that gene, the serotonin transporter, has something to do with anorexia nervosa. Now, I don't know if that seems a little bit arrogant to you, but given how many genes there are on this slide, I think it was a little arrogant of us to presume that. Rather than having some guess about the biology and plucking one gene out of that slide, we're looking at coverage over the entire genome. And we're comparing the genome between individuals with a disorder and individuals without a disorder to see where differences in the genome lie. And so we pulled together the Genetic Consortium for Anorexia Nervosa, which was funded by the Wellcome Trust Case Control Consortium 3. And that was finished. That's in Press and Molecular Psychiatry now. It was the largest genome-wide association study of anorexia nervosa conducted to date. There had been one smaller one done by the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and Price Foundation Group that didn't find any significance. So this was our Manhattan plot. And you know by now that, let's just say, construction has not yet begun on this metropolis because we don't have any buildings in the Manhattan skyline of anorexia nervosa. But why am I not disappointed by these results? Size matters. Size is so critical to genome-wide association studies. We thought that 3,000 cases was a big study when we got it started. It's not a big study. It's a minuscule study. And this slide basically at this point gets outdated on a daily basis. But as you can see, anorexia nervosa is an itty-bitty little red dot there. And our job now is to grow that dot. And again, just looking at schizophrenia, I'm not crying about anorexia because when I go back to where schizophrenia was in 2009, their construction looks exactly the same as ours. There was nothing that went above that magical red line. And then as their cases grew, so did their skyline. So we're hoping that unless we continue to believe somehow that anorexia nervosa is purely a sociocultural illness, there's no reason why we're not going to go down the same path that schizophrenia did. And just within last week, I'm happy to say, especially for the eating disorders folks in the room, we started a binge eating disorder consortium. So we're starting to do the same thing, moving on to looking at a second eating disorder. So the other thing that's new in the field is the Anorexia Nervosa Genetics Initiative. This is an initiative funded by the Klarman Family Foundation, and they funded us to collect 8,000 cases and 8,000 controls in the United States, in Australia, in Sweden, and in Denmark. And a spin-off of that has actually happened in the UK called Charlotte's Helix. A woman in the UK, an amazing advocate who died on January 13th from breast cancer, decided to devote her last ounce of energy and to pull together all the advocates in the UK to create Charlotte's Helix, which is paralleling Angie. And that effort is in the field now as well. And our challenge to the field was to find 25,000 cases, so we're calling it AN25K. That's a lie. We actually need more than 25,000. We're really reaching out across the country and across all the other countries now to get people to donate DNA and clinical information so that we can get the same kind of results that the other psychiatric disorders are enjoying as their sample sizes are increasing.